I'm joined today by Geoff. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Emma.
All the way from Chicago today.
Indeed, indeed.
Take me back, Geoff, and tell me about the corporate part of your career, to use that terminology. You built a really successful career in corporate and made your way up to the exec level. Talk me through it. Tell me about it.
Well, I would like to start just at the beginning just of my career
Mm,
and obviously not go year by year, but just talk a
sure.
little bit about the career overall. So 30
Mm,
years in the communications industry, both on the corporate side as well as the agency side. So split between about 11 years on the corporate side and 18 years on the agency side. I think what's at least fascinating to me and interesting to me is that the career that I had in communications and particularly in the biotech and pharmaceutical industry really happened by accident because my studies in school were not communications related. I didn't go to a school where there was a communications major. I was an English writing major where there obviously are some transferable skills. You need to know how to write to be in communications, but it was kind of an accident. So it's always surprising when I look back to say, wow, I stayed in that industry and in that career for my
yeah.
entire career. And the accident piece of it was I went and interviewed for a job in a completely different industry at a PR agency. I didn't get that job, and they basically told me to go a floor down and try the the healthcare group. And
Yeah.
I did that and got that job. And so again, that's always a point of discussion, particularly when I talk to people of how did
Yeah.
you start or how did you get involved,
Mm,
and people are very surprised by it happened by accident, really. And
yeah.
I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with just I'm an extrovert, so fell in love with kind of the extroverted nature of the communications field overall, and really got into the pharmaceutical and biotech space. Obviously had no background in science at all and
Mm,
stayed with it and really, as I said, fell in love with it because it was something that I could see where what I was doing in a way adjacently was helping people, helping patients. And I don't know, it gave me some sense of purpose. And then when I ended my career on the corporate side, I ended as chief communications officer and led a team of 54 people that I built from 1 to 54 in about 8.5 years.
wow.
And that was really exciting. It just was exciting to
Mm,
be a part of uh, growing a group within a company that as the company was growing, not too often do you get to do that in your career. So it was really
no.
exciting to kind of build the team and bring the team together.
Yeah. And that's a pretty big change. You said from 1 to 54 in 8.5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started as an
That's
N
really
of
cool.
one and started the
Yeah.
communications corporate affairs function. And the company was growing so rapidly that we had to continue to add pieces. And I had never been part of a build that large before or a part of a company with that significant growth over that period of time. And so it was one of those things where it was a interesting and new challenge, but a fun challenge to do something like that.
Yeah. And to your earlier point about being able to see your own impact from 1 to 54 is a pretty significant impact. Like you can see you can see what you did.
Well, and to that point too, Emma, you can really see kind of the evolution of
Mm,
strategy, tactics, and
yeah.
what that growth actually did for the enterprise overall, which to me was the cool piece of it. It was not just the build itself and the adding of the people and how even their careers grew over time. It was really seeing both internally and externally what the function meant for the company and how we really changed kind of the dynamic and the external image of the company over time. And that thing to me, that was the really impactful piece that was exciting to see as we continue to do different things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then the R word came calling. Redundancy.
The R word.
The R word. Tell me about, I guess, how that came about, and kind of talk me through what happened.
Yeah, it was interesting. So, as I said, we as the company was growing, we built a culture that a lot of people were very tied to. So when it came to the time of the acquisition, we announced it, that we were being acquired in December of 2022. It was a really shock. It was a shock to the system for people. And I
Mm,
think there was a lot of not only fear just from a job standpoint, and that is natural,
mm,
but I think the fear of losing something that you were really a part of building from the ground up. And as I
yeah.
mentioned, not a lot of people get to experience in that in their careers.
Mm,
So that was a real emotional piece. And I'll get to the kind of the rest of the emotional piece afterward. But we announced, as I said, in December of 2022, we were supposed to close the acquisition in May of 2023. And then one of the regulatory agencies in the US decided to sue us to stop the acquisition. And it ended up not being completed until November of that year, so November of 2023.
wow.
But
Okay.
during that time, back to the emotional component of it, you can
Mm,
kind of see what roller coaster it could have been. It
yeah.
was, okay, we're preparing for this huge change as a company, as a culture by May. And then all of a sudden, just kidding. It's not going to happen in
Yeah.
May. And then you had kind of the down point of people over the summer thinking, okay, one, is this going to happen for real
Mm,
now? Some people were thinking, hey, I'd be okay if it didn't, and
yeah.
we'd continue to move on. And others were just a little bit more confused, and we continued to push forward and do the things that you would normally do when companies are being acquired, working with the other company, doing talent reviews to get to positions that may be redundant, may not be redundant. Who are they going to need for their team as it starts to expand? And so it was difficult for me, and I think for my direct reports as well, from a leadership standpoint, to try to hold that together,
Absolutely.
because we'd never
Mm,
been really confronted with this type of emotion over the course of our career at this particular company, but really
yeah.
anywhere else. And I think for people, and in particularly me, the redundancy, I mean, at my level was kind of expected, but I didn't know for sure, but it was kind of expected. And I think other people expected to be redundant as well. And some people were sooner than others. It was staggered over time, kind of as people, as member of the teams left, there were different time periods with which they did that. But emotionally, I'd been through so much already. And I think as I look back, and even as I write about in the book, I really didn't take care of my own emotional roller coaster that was related to the redundancy. I was very concerned with my team, and was my team going to be okay? And that really had a significant impact on me. It wasn't necessarily the redundancy itself, it was the emotional, what should I say, shrapnel that was left
Yeah.
after it, because I
Yeah.
didn't do the work on myself. I just kind of was on cruise
Mm,
control and saying, okay, how do I get Joe Smith to keep his job? And how do I talk to the
yeah.
company to make sure that they understand that he is that integral piece, or so and so is an integral piece. You have to, you're thinking differently, and you're not thinking about yourself necessarily and the emotional needs that you have. So that was probably the biggest impact on me anyway, mentally.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you don't often hear people talk about in relation to redundancy of when you are in a very senior or leadership role in that scenario. You are carrying, certainly if you're a person who cares about others, you are carrying a significant weight there, because as you say, you're dealing with your own, or not dealing with your own feelings about it, but you're carrying with you the weight of what's going to happen to the 54 people that I brought into the company, and that I've been there and kind of helping them to build their careers. And that's a big deal. Like that is a lot of weight to carry. And And also, there's an element of, what's the phrase I'm searching for? Kind of game face there, where
Yeah.
you feel like you need to be there for the team, and I've got to have my game face on, and I've got to help them feel optimistic, positive, strong, whichever adjective it is, and I can't show that actually I'm really uncertain, or I'm really struggling to know what comes next. I've got to show up and do the thing.
Well, and plus there's just a juxtaposition because I think our natural tendency is to be sad about what is happening and sad about what we're leaving. But the other part of that psychology too is that you should celebrate endings and celebrate what
Yeah,
happened and what was good and what was positive and what you did create. And I don't think we do enough of the latter because it's the
yeah,
hardest thing to do because the easy default is to just be emotional and be sad. And yes, I was sad and I didn't, and a lot of people were sad. And I don't know though that they knew why they were sad. Was it because the team wasn't going to be the same anymore? Was it because the culture wasn't going to be the same anymore? And on and on and on, the list grows. And unless you kind of identify the reason why you're sad, I think you can't do, if you don't do that, then you can't move on to that
yeah,
celebrating what did happen. But I think still, I'm still getting used to that. And I don't think it's easy to do that, but I think it's important to do it.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's, as you say, it's almost the default, isn't it? If something's ending, I loved it, therefore I am sad. And sure, that's part of the emotion, but gratitude for the great thing that happened, happiness for the friendships that you made, all of the learnings, the challenges, all of that. And also, I think probably from that reflection comes an element of, why did I love it? What were the things that I
Right.
loved about it that I would want to take forward into something else? Because hopefully you might be able to recreate parts of that in, whatever different scenario comes next. But if you don't actually know what those things are, then how do you recreate them?
Yeah, and equally what you didn't like as well, because I
Yeah,
think we
absolutely.
automatically think that, and this happened in my situation too. Okay, what's next? Where is so and so going to go and so going to go, and where are they going to work next? Because I want to work there. And you
Yeah.
think that replication is always good. And in some instances, it is what you just said with some of the good positive things. But
Mm.
replication also means you're going to replicate some of the things that you probably didn't like.
Yeah.
And because people
Yeah.
don't change that quickly over time and
No.
lose their bad habits. So you have to kind of be careful about exactly what you want to replicate.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Like, just because you really enjoyed working with, let's use Joe Smith again. I loved
Okay.
working with Joe Smith. We had a great relationship. Joe's off over there. I'll see if there's an opportunity for me there too. But that doesn't take into account the culture of the new organization and
Right.
and all of the other things, as you say, just replicating the Joe Smith of it isn't necessarily going to get you. Maybe the remit's quite different, the resources are quite different, the management structure is quite different, all of the things. And if you're not clear on all of those elements, yeah, you can see how someone would go wrong in that instance, and then potentially be really surprised that they've
Right.
that they've gone wrong, and not really know why or how that happens.
Yeah. I thought this was going to be the same and it's not the same.
Yeah,
And
and
because
it's
you
not.
didn't do that inventory in advance, you still don't know why.
Yeah, yeah. So once you'd kind of got everyone else through it, and then it kind of comes to you. Talk me through that.
Right. So part of the journey piece of it, when I did do my know my job was going to be redundant, I had already planned kind of my next move, and I had applied for a fellowship at the University of Chicago, and it was called the Leadership in Society Initiative. It was designed for people who were looking for that next phase to use their career experience to impact society in a different way. And I used it as an opportunity to, one, to say, okay, I need a break from doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I was really kicking the can down the road and staying busy and trying to stay busy,
Yeah.
because when you're busy up until a certain point of time and then not going to be as busy as you were, at least for me, I needed something to keep me busy. And so
Yeah.
I was in it for the right reasons. I really was. There was good intention there, and I got a lot of value out of it. And I write about it in the book. And it's there's still a lot of value that I'm getting from it. But I think it was me trying to do what I did normally throughout my career and saying, okay, I'm going to leave this thing on a Friday and go back to another thing on a Monday because I know I need to keep busy and keep moving, or else I'm going to
Yeah.
be very, very bored. And
Mm.
I think the thing that stands out for me is that probably a week after I left the corporate role, my wife said, "This is going to hit you at some point.
Mm.
It's going to hit you." And I said, "No, I'm totally fine. All good.
I'm fine.
All good. All good." And it was about a year later where it kind of hit me. But again, I was battling a lot of different things, even through the fellowship, about the identity piece of it, who I was in career, and now stepping into this new environment with people who I didn't know, and we were together for a full academic year. I felt a lot of them were more experienced, smarter, had just different knowledge than I did, and moving from being an expert in the room to not being an expert in the room, and understanding how much weight you really put onto that, and with the short period of time with which that happened, it was pretty shocking. And so I struggled with it for a good couple of months. And then the latter part of, I think we're in 2024 now, I just got severely depressed and kind of lost direction and didn't know where I was going and didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think that's, of course, my wife was right. And that was the time where it kind
Of
of hit
course.
me. It kind
Yeah.
of hit me, and I just, yeah, I was lost. I was lost.
Yeah. And do you think you mentioned the identity piece there, and I come back to it because I think it is such a critical piece of the sort of redundancy puzzle, if you
Mm-hmm.
like, that we, and I think particularly men actually, but I think we all do it, but men perhaps slightly more so. There's so much attached to the title, and so much of identity is kind of built up with, well, I'm a, chief communications officer. I've got this big, kind of corporate job, and then it's not there anymore. And who am I without that? And they're pretty big questions
Yeah.
to be asking yourself. I think particularly if you've never asked yourself those types of questions before.
And I never did. And I think you've
Yeah.
hit on a very key point. And that's what I'm telling a lot of people now who want to talk to me just about some of the things I discuss in the book, is that a lot of the work is exactly that. It's asking who you are when you're not doing the thing that gives you your identity, or who are you when something that defined you goes away. And that could be any type of loss. And I don't
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we do that type of work. Back to what we were talking about before, of doing the inventory of the things that you like. We don't do that, and that's a lot easier than
Yeah.
trying to figure out who you are outside of work. I can tell you, Emma, that the best way I can describe it is that, well, two things. One, it's the armor completely goes away, and you don't realize that you're wearing any armor throughout your entire career, but you are, and it's very protective and it's comfortable and all of those things. I found a lot of safety. I found a lot of comfort, both emotionally and just mentally in work. And that was my place to run. And when I didn't have that armor anymore, or the scaffolding that was around me,
Yeah.
I didn't know what was inside me because I hadn't done that work to discover it and how it was going to really make me feel when it was gone. And I think that was the most difficult part, and actually kind of the sad part too, because a 49 to 50-year-old person at the time doesn't know who he is. And that's, I mean, saying that out loud sounds a little weird. It does. And it's, but I also didn't do the homework leading up to that. And it was scary. It was scary. And I'll point to one other example. Right before I left my corporate role, I was concurrently doing the fellowship. So I was doing a little bit of double duty at the same time. I went to an event that was all senior level communicators. It was invite only. I had never been invited before. And I felt really good that I'd been invited. And I said, oh, this is a great kind of send off that I'm finally included in this group of senior level communicators. And I was actually asked to present, and I presented just about transition and change and all of those things. And how do you carry culture from one company to another after you put so much sweat equity into building one culture, things like that. And at dinner, I asked a Fortune 50 chief communications officer how much longer I would be relevant after I left. And that was the stupidest thing to ask, because he put a time frame on it. The person put a time frame on it and said probably about a year to 18 months. And that scared me to death.
Yeah.
And so not only is it the identity piece of it, but now it's relevance.
You've got like a time clock ticking in the back of your head. Yeah.
I did. And so that was difficult. And again, it's not necessarily something that we think about. We don't really think about being relevant, or at least I didn't while I was in role. It just came naturally because I was a senior leader. I had a long career in the industry. People knew who I was. People listened to things I said occasionally, and all of those things. And you don't realize how big of a deal it is until it's not there anymore. And I think, honestly, that conversation drove me to start my own consultancy, to kind of jump back into it after I was done with the fellowship. I mean, I really do. Because I said, ooh, I don't want to lose that feeling. I don't want to lose what I previously had, because I'm scared of losing that. Yeah. And maybe I was scared of who I was underneath all of it.
Yeah. That's what I was just thinking as you were saying that, actually, of like, I was scared of losing that. Is it that you're scared of losing that, or is it that you're scared of what comes next because you don't know what that is? It's scared of losing and fear of the unknown, potentially. It's I guess two sides of the same coin, isn't it?
Right. No, I think you're exactly right. And particularly if you haven't done the work to ask yourself who you are without that, the identity, the relevance, the title, all of those things, there is a fear of the unknown. Because even when I started consulting, I didn't know if I could do it, even though I'd been doing it for so long, because it was just new and I was solo, and I was thinking, is anybody even going to listen to me? Am I going to get any clients? Is this going to happen? And it was just, again, to your point, that unknown of not knowing if you can succeed without what you had before.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned in there that I just wanted to come back to, because it's something that I see a lot with people that go through redundancy, and you mentioned busyness. And I almost kind of want to do it in quotes of busyness, because, finish on the Friday, start something new on the Monday, which on the surface, I get it, feels kind of logical, and you might even go as far as to say, well, it feels healthy. I'm moving forward. There's, I'm taking action. And so it feels like the right kind of course of action. But if you haven't actually stopped to process the loss, essentially, because it is a loss, it's the job, it's all the things, it's the people and everything that goes into it. And if you're just going kind of straight into the next thing, kind of feels like you're just sort of shoving all that stuff down, like it hasn't gone away. It's still there. You've just kind of shoved it down and pushed on. And so I wonder, when I hear people say things like that the busyness is, it's kind of a crutch. If I just keep moving and I keep busy and I'm, go, then I don't have time to think about all this stuff because I'm just busy.
Right. No, and I did that for 30 years. And I think that's why it was important for me when I actually sat down to write, was really looking at all those patterns throughout the course of my career. How many times did I do that? And what was I really running from and running to? And I don't know if I was really running to anything better, but I was probably running from a lot of different things. And whether that was something that I didn't deal with at the last job, some other emotion, externally, internally, whatever it was, some sense that I needed to try something new so that I could really explore something that I didn't know about myself. Whatever it was, I did that for 30 years, and I
Yeah.
just did it even after I was
Yeah.
after my last corporate role. I did it again,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's you don't think about that processing, because whether it's okay, I have to keep busy, or I have to keep working, or I can't take time off between the next thing because of financial reasons, because whatever it may be, we don't care for ourselves the same way we care for
No.
our careers.
No.
And it's such a foreign concept for people, or most people.
Yeah.
And I just we'd rather not, what we talked about before, either celebrate the ending or process the loss, or however you want to look at it. We'd rather not do that, because the easier way out is to just keep busy. And I think that's one thing I'm
Going.
trying to find now is, or avoid now, is falling back into those old patterns.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
is the book promotion, is having conversations like this just busyness? Because I need to stay busy? Are other things that I'm doing actually productive busyness, or is it
Yeah.
not? Or am I just trying to fill voids that I normally filled with
Mm.
work related things? And so I'm very attentive to that
Yeah.
now, particularly in this time.
Yeah. Hearing you say, I think you sort of started by saying, so I, sat down to sort of start writing the book and starting to kind of ask yourself these questions and work through these things. That the word that came into my head hearing you say that was brave. Like that sounded to me like a really brave thing to do, to kind of confront all this stuff, if you like. Did you feel brave at the time? Like what was the feeling?
I don't know that I felt brave. I felt exposed.
Mm.
I think writing the book in the manner which I did, and I didn't write it for an audience, with an audience in mind. I wrote it for myself. I knew in order to kind of fully process things that I had gone through or was going through, I needed to be transparent, vulnerable, and just get it all out there. And so I was a little bit scared in going that deep
Yeah,
to
I'm
exposing
sure.
myself. So I didn't really
Yeah.
feel necessarily brave in doing that.
Mm.
I kind of a couple times said, am I really doing this? Am I really saying this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was difficult at times, because
Mm.
I mean, you brought up men aren't good talking about this stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
earlier, and I agree with you. The majority of the feedback I'm getting right now is from men. And so I'm glad that I did something for myself to confront my emotions, but also glad that it is hopefully helping people start the conversations that we're having now, and
Yeah.
getting to a point where you at least start to process and do the work. I will tell you though, I didn't expect, when I sat down to write it, to uncover the same patternistic behavior for really a majority of my career and life. And so
Mm.
that was kind of a new thing to me. I had a little bit of an inkling to say, oh, well, maybe I did this thing earlier in my career, or maybe I did this thing after my dad passed away, or whatever it may be. And it was a little bit unexpected of how there was this interesting through line throughout. And I think that was really one of the harder things to just confront, because I mean, imagine it, Emma, after 30 years, you're looking back and saying, wow, on paper and externally, people think I had a successful career. I'm not denying that, but people also thought that I had all of it together all the time,
Yeah.
and I didn't. And it's almost kind of, you find this weird disappointment, even that did I disappoint
Yeah.
people along the way by creating this mask of stability that I had? And
Yeah.
probably not, but those thoughts kind of creep into your head when you're diving this deep.
Absolutely. The pattern that I thought it on something earlier that you said as well, and like the patterns that we repeat totally unconsciously, just over and over again without even realizing. And as you say, 30 years, 40 years can go by and you suddenly realize and you're like, wow, I have done that thing or a version of that thing over and over and over again
Mm-hmm.
without even realizing. And I think, and that's I think why I come back to Brave. And I appreciate that it didn't feel like that at the time. It felt the complete opposite as you're doing it. But to someone hearing the story, that's how I hear it. I hear
Mm-hmm.
someone actually being really brave to sit down and go, okay, what is actually going on here? Let me take a really deep breath and kind of just start to unpack all of this stuff. I think that is really brave. And I think, as you said, the feedback that you've been getting, particularly from men, I think the thing that I think is particularly brave about it is that by doing it yourself, you're almost allowing, that's the wrong word, but giving other people the opportunity to do the same thing, to show that it's okay, like the world didn't end. I didn't kind of crumble into a heap on the floor. It was tough, sure, but I'm okay. Like
Yeah.
you can do this and kind of work through it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling a lot of people it's permission, not a plan.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
permission to get to start doing this.
Yeah,
And hopefully they see my step as saying things out loud, and maybe they'll have the confidence to do so. But that's kind of the conflict too in the external feedback of the book, is that some people want a plan, some people want a 5-step plan. I don't
yeah,
have that. It's not in the book.
mm,
I'm giving what you just said, allowing people, giving people permission to just be vulnerable as they want to be. And
yeah,
that's, to me, the start. That's the start.
yeah,
You don't have to do it for a month, 2 months. You could do it for a couple of days and just have a conversation where you're trying to be vulnerable, trying to be a little bit more transparent about what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, or even if it's just processing something that just happened that may be hitting you a little bit differently than other things that have happened in the past.
yeah. I think also the knowledge that none of us have it figured out.
Yeah.
Like it can look one way on the outside. Someone can have a super successful career, you know, great family life, whatever it is, all the things. It doesn't mean they've got it all figured out. The more conversations that I have, I speak to a lot of people through the podcast, through my coaching business. I can tell you, no one's got it figured out. We're all just doing the best that we can and trying to figure it out one step at a time. And I think just that is a great word to use, permission to kind of go, yeah, I'm not sure either. let's let's kind of talk about it and let's figure it out together.
Well, and I think look at what just social media has done to that concept, and
Yeah, I
LinkedIn
know.
in particular.
Yeah.
And it's not me bashing LinkedIn, because I
No,
participate in
no.
LinkedIn every day, and I'm guilty
Yeah,
of doing the same thing, showing up there saying how everything is great, how I'm
yeah,
grateful for this, how I've done this, how we've all, been successful at doing this, but nobody shows the work to get there. And often that
no,
work was not easy.
yeah,
And just imagine, Emma, if more people
I know.
led by example and said, you know what, I'm unfinished and it's
Yeah,
okay to be unfinished. And they said that
yeah,
out loud. Imagine how different things may feel, because we celebrate all achievements and celebrate in there. I mean, I do too. But we don't celebrate the work to get there,
messy,
and that
the
that
messy
the the,
middle. Yeah.
the messy middle, all the liminal
Mm,
spaces that people go through. And it's
yeah,
and I don't know. And again, I didn't want to necessarily say I'm going to be carry the flag to do this, but I just think it's important for more people
Yeah.
to do it, and more people to see that there is a different world out there than just the, I don't know, the tidiness that is people who just think that everyone is, as you said, have it
Yeah.
all together, or everybody's just finished perfectly.
Yeah, I like that phrasing of the tidiness. It's that ties in with the messy middle, doesn't it? But yeah, we're also
Yeah.
tidy. Like we're all such, finished, perfect versions, and nothing could be further from the truth in reality, I think.
Right.
How
Right.
The other thing that was coming to mind as you were talking about that, Geoff, how do you sort of come to think about success now? Because I would imagine your definition kind of in the corporate days was potentially tied to those things, the corporate career, the title, all of that kind of stuff. How do you think about it now?
Well, in the spirit of being unfinished, I'm still trying to figure that out. No, I really
Yeah.
am. I wish I could give your listeners an answer, but that's the hardest thing right now,
Mm,
because I'm falling back into bad habits, measuring things that I do with old metrics, and it's driving me absolutely crazy.
yeah.
And so I'm trying to find what those new definitions are and how I feel. I'm trying to find joy. I'm trying to find joy
Yeah.
in things that I'm doing. And I can tell you, promoting a book, it's a test. It's a test. I absolutely love the people I've met. I love having conversations like this. To me, this is success, is spreading the word and having conversation. But it's so different from past successes that I'm still coming to terms with, if that is going to make me feel the same way. And I think that's the most difficult piece right now. And so I'm just kind of taking experience by experience and saying, okay, does that align with my values that I want to have, with helping people or spreading the word or having conversations or doing whatever? And is that okay? Is success now defined by values that I have or a mission
Yeah.
that I have when it previously wasn't? Maybe, hopefully.
Yeah.
My wife and I just launched a nonprofit, and that's going to also be a big test, because we have a cohort of 23 students who are going to be with us for the next 2 years, and we're trying to help them build more durable and meaningful careers in the PR and comms industry. And I need to be okay with that. This isn't my success. This is their success and what they're
Yeah.
going to do in their careers. And that's a completely different metric. This is not necessarily dependent on me. It's dependent on them. And can I live vicariously through the success that they're going to have? And will that
Yeah.
bring me joy and the similar feeling? So again, a lot of things that I'm still trying to navigate my way through the best that I can. And it continues to be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah. It's such an interesting point, the metric one, because not only are the metrics completely different, in some cases they don't even exist, or you don't
Mhm.
actually get to find them out. For example, I'm sure this is true. Someone somewhere has read your book and it's probably changed their life. Like it's fundamentally changed the way that they think about themselves and what they do. And you will might never know that. That person
Right.
isn't necessarily going to reach out to you and send you a message and be like, hey, Geoff, your book changed my life, or, has had a fundamental impact on me. Hopefully you do get some of that feedback. And I'd imagine that feedback's incredibly meaningful, but you're not going to get that from everybody. You
Right.
might have really touched someone's life. Hopefully someone listening to this conversation, it's really touched them, and they're thinking about the way that they maybe want to do things differently. You or I may never know that.
Right.
um, and it is a really interesting space to be in. And it's interesting to hear you articulate it in that way, because it's something that I struggle with as well in what I do. Certainly on the podcast side of things, obviously the coaching thing's a little bit more immediate. You do get
Mhm.
feedback from people, but not so much on the podcast. And even in, even previously in my old recruitment days, I can think of examples where I've met someone years and years later, and they've, said something kind of profound, and I've thought, wow, like I never knew that.
Right.
And there must be so many examples of that. And as you say, it's finding your own, what's the word? I was going to say peace. It sounds a bit cliched, but your own kind of peace and acceptance with that. That
Yeah.
I'm doing good work. I'm making a difference. I'm having an impact, but I might never know that I am.
Right.
And that's a weird kind of in between space to be in, I think.
Yeah. It's the tree in the forest concept. If the tree
Yeah,
falls in the forest
exactly.
is and nobody's around,
Did it really
did it make a
fall? Yeah,
sound?
exactly. Yeah,
And so it's a little bit of that and getting comfortable with that. But you're exactly right. And I appreciate you putting it in that context too, because look, admittedly, yeah, I look at book sales. Those are old metrics. I
yeah.
shouldn't do that. I mean, because I have to get back to the original plan here. And that was I didn't want to write a bestseller. That wasn't the goal.
Mm,
The goal was to do exactly what we're doing right now. Meet
yeah.
as many people as I can, have as many conversations as I have, encourage conversation among people who weren't having these conversations. And so now I just have to continue to remind myself that that is good enough. That, to your point, I may be helping somebody or changing somebody's approach
Mm,
that was thinking a little bit differently. And if I don't know that, okay, I have to be okay with that. I also have
yeah.
to be okay with just sitting and saying, one, I wrote a book. That's a great accomplishment. Two, I think it's a pretty good book. And
Mm,
I think, but I think the difficult piece and what I struggle with is that I was so vulnerable and I was so transparent that I don't know, part of me expects a little bit more just because I put myself out there. And I know that's a little bit selfish and a little bit cocky maybe, but it's it's something that you start to feel and you start to judge a little
yeah.
bit to say why aren't people liking my thing
Mm,
because I poured my heart into it and I would expect more people would like it. And
yeah.
again, that's what I battle though. That's an old metric.
Yeah. But it might not be that it might very well be that the people like it, that they're just not telling you that they like
True.
it. That's
True.
the
You're exactly right.
that yeah. It's a it's a very it is a strange space to be in. As you say, I think it's the difference between the external metrics versus the internal
Mhm.
metrics. And I think to a certain extent, like as human beings, we're just not really wired that way. There's tens of thousands, however many it is, years of evolution that are wired into why you keep looking to the book sales and the
Right.
external metrics. And, you're battling a lot of years of evolution there. But yeah, it's a really an interesting point of how you measure that, and yeah, how you come to think about it. And to be fair, that question around success and what success means to someone in kind of different seasons of their life is essentially, that's the reason why I started the podcast,
Right.
to have those types of conversations and to explore what different versions of success mean to people, and yeah, in different kind of times in their life. I think it's a really fascinating question. And to the unfinished point we were making earlier, like I don't know that there's necessarily an answer. There's certainly not one answer for that's true. There's the answer that's true for the individual, or the things that kind of feel important to them. But to me, they're the interesting and important, I think, questions to ask.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Final,
It's right up there with who you are. Who are you when you're not without
absolutely.
your identity?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Final question, Geoff, and it's always the final question here, and that is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Uh, I love this question because I had to do a lot of exploration throughout the writing process to kind of get to the answer, and it's how meaningful presence is and being present. And I wish I could go back 25 years and tell my younger self that is a key to success is being present. primarily for friends, loved ones, family, all of those things. And to really be attentive to that as you're building career, as you're becoming successful in your career, all of those things. I'm in the process right now of trying to repair friendships, repair relationships, just because I wasn't present during my career. And it's interesting to think about my wife. We've talked about this a lot, and she kind of says it in passing, but and this is how I know that it not being present did have an impact, because she said, I always knew that the job came first for you. And that's a hard, one, admission to make. Two, it's a hard thing to hear. It's a very hard thing to hear. And so that's the space I'm in now. How do I be more present, even when I'm doing the things that I'm doing with the book and the nonprofit and all of those things? How do I make presence the thing? And maybe that is back to the success question.
Yeah.
Maybe that is a lead indicator right now for success. The fact that I'm more present, that I'm spending more time even with myself and being present for myself. Maybe that is the ultimate success that I should consider. But that's the biggest thing that I'm kind of honing in on now.
It's a really lovely answer, and I haven't heard a version of that answer, and certainly one that uses the word presence specifically. But it's a lovely word to choose. I think I sort of have a version of that answer, and for me it's time. But when I say time, what I actually mean is presence. And actually to hear you articulate it in that way, I'm like, yeah, that's actually the point that I made to myself when I said time. It's time and space to use in a way that feels meaningful and important to me, which probably ultimately is time and presence with loved ones, with friends, and being present in your life, not just kind of busynessing your way through it.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Geoff. I've so enjoyed this conversation, and I really admire what you've done with the book and the types of conversations that you're having, and just so enjoyed chatting to you. So thank you very much for taking the time.
No, thank you for having me on, and I appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoyed this conversation.